So you are in object-oriented PHP for Drupalers, for beginners. If you are already writing object-oriented code, and I don't mean maybe a snippet or two here in WordPress or Drupal where you've got the arrow to something, to a property of an object. I mean actually building classes from scratch. If you're at that level, this is probably going to be too basic for you. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, this might be perfect for you then. So, let you get settled. My name is James Jondan. No, I'm not mispronouncing it. It's Turkish. I've been doing PHP for 6 years, Drupal for 4, and I work at Code Journeyman in Chattanooga. We do web and mobile app development in Drupal specifically. We are interested in going into Go. Haven't actually gotten any projects with that yet. I'm also the founder of FPV Raceways. We hope to open the first FPV drone raceway in Chattanooga. Check it out and support us when we start our crowdfunding campaign. Prerequisites for this talk are the basics of some programming. Knowledge in variables, arrays, logic, and for loops, and even functions would be necessary. And as I mentioned before, you might already have done some amount of working with objects. If you're familiar with the node object, we load that, we instantiate it, and work with different properties of a node object. But you might have known that that is an object. And it's not the same as an array, although it might seem like it carries properties like an array or elements like an array, but there's a little bit different because you could actually attach a function, we call it a method, to an object. And in this case, I've got an object for a user, and we run the, we use the run method. We give it the number of miles he ran, and we simply increase that user's number of miles. So the objectives are a high-level overview of OOP concepts. We'll define some terminology and review practical examples. So understanding object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is actually primarily a style. It is simply a method to kind of not drive yourself crazy by allowing you to group similar concepts of code in your code together to try to be dry in your code. In other words, don't repeat yourself so that when you do have to change something, and changes do come, you only have to make that change a single time. And it's simple and straightforward structure that other developers coming in behind you can get a grasp of what they're working with quicker. But before we get too deep into the finer points of object-oriented programming, basic understanding of the differences between objects and classes is necessary. So let's go over that now. Developers start talking about objects and classes, and they might appear interchangeable, but that's not the case. So to recognize the difference between objects and classes, think of classes like blueprints, and think of objects as the actual houses. That really cleared things up for me when I first heard that. And we can take a class, for example, dog. And a dog has properties such as color, eye color, height, weight, length. And he's also got methods, where functions where he sits, lays down, shakes, comes. And from these set blueprints, we can actually create a real instance, a real object, Maximus. And Maximus carries those same properties, but now he's actually got values to those properties, as well as being able to use the methods that we defined. So what does the structure of all of this look like? Well, we've got to declare a class using the class keyword, followed by the name of the class and the curly braces. Then we declare that class's properties and methods. So over here, we've basically said this is the blueprints. We've got some variables that we call properties that are part of dog, and we've got those methods we talked about earlier. Now we've actually created the object, Maximus. We've assigned new dog toMaximus. So that is our actual object. This is the class, that's the object. And now we can assign values to each of those properties. And later we'll even see that we could use the methods as well. So again, just use the class, give it a name. We can write our first property, which is just like writing a variable, except that we've got a keyword in front of it, and we're going to go over what public is in a moment, but not just yet. So we've got my person, and we assign a new person class to the my person object, and we can actually echo out. I do a variable dump so we can take a look. So we've got an object person, and we've shown that his public property name is assigned a string of John and gives it the length. But when we echo out my person name, then we actually get John. So let's add some functionality. We'll call class-specific functions methods. So you'll hear me use these terms interchangeably, but really, when you're talking in a class, when you're talking about an object, the functions there are methods. We can create a method run where we accept the number of miles ran and increase that object's number of miles. We can even burn some calories as well. So that, well, there it is. So I've actually lost some weight during that process. For our front-end visitors, I thought it would be actually a good moment to show what object-oriented programming would look like side by side with JavaScript. And let me see, is there, yeah, there's not much at the bottom there, not much at the bottom there too. Okay, so some of my later slides actually have longer code, so I need to make sure I scroll for them. But very similar as far as the concept. We're creating the class name, we're setting up some initial values, and we're creating or allowing for a method called run. We do the same thing in them, and here we're instantiating a few objects. Same thing here, and actually running the run method right there. So very, very similar as far as the structure goes. If you guys want to get a download of that. So to make use of objects easier, PHP and other languages have what we call magic methods. They provide a special, they're methods that are called when certain common actions occur on objects. The most common that you'll see is the constructor. There's also a destructor when the object is destroyed, when the end of file is reached in PHP, but the constructor is going to be something you turn to a lot. So the idea here is, in this case, we've actually passed a color and an iColor to the construct object, or the constructor method, that when we instantiate Rover, we can pass it that he's a black and white dog with light blue eyes. And that assigns it to this object, Rover, much like you would any other function. The idea is, instead of setting legs to 4 and everything outside the constructor as part of the class, you do it in the constructor so the whole class can now accept parameters. But it is not required for you to pass or use parameters in a constructor, and we might see that a little bit later on. Another magic method is the TwoString method. It will incur an error if you try to print the output or print an object without a TwoString method defined. So now that we've defined the TwoString method, we can successfully define what it is. don't include any sensitive information like passwords and credit card details to the TwoString. This is used mostly in debugging and logging, and can be useful a lot in those cases. Inheritance. This is actually really cool. Classes can actually inherit the methods and properties of another class using the extends keyword. So kind of think of this as a parent-child relationship and with properties and methods. Here's an example where square is actually one type of triangle. And both, sorry, thank you. Yeah, I said triangle, didn't I? Yeah. I have written rectangle. And note that the get angle, oh wait, I haven't gone far enough. Okay, there we go. So note that get angle is actually defined in the grandparent class shape, but we're using it down the line and able to get the angle for both a square and a shape. Does everybody kind of follow what's happening right here? Anybody not follow? Let me ask you that. Anybody not follow what's happening here? Cool. Parent-child structure here is really useful down the line. So you could also override or change the behavior of an existing method in a parent. And it's just as simple as redeclaring that method name. And with that, you can, in this case, shape has a constructor with a single parameter, and it takes the number of sides. But in this case, a rectangle will always have 4 sides, and it will always have a width and a length associated with it. So we specify that it's going to take width and length, and we always specify 4 for the number of sides there. We can append new functionality to an inherited method. First, by running the parent method in your override using the parent keyword. So the idea here is that the number of sides will be passed to shape. So we're telling shape, okay, we need 4 sides for this rectangle. Instead of, I don't know if you saw it, but in the last slide, we've got sides defined, or we're declaring sides in both of these, which actually wasn't necessary on my part, but the only reason I did it was because I wanted to pass 4 as the value to sides inside rectangle. Here, we were able to make our code a little more dry. Don't repeat yourself. Getting rid of the sides variable or property, and simply passing the value for it in the construct call, the parent construct call inside the constructor for rectangle. Everybody follow? All right, go for it.
This may be a PHP specific thing. The arrow, the dash.
Mm-hmm.
Greater than.
Yeah.
What is that doing in PHP?
Okay, so that's allowing you to actually call the parameter or the function method for that object. So in JavaScript, that would be, you know, mypotato.cook. So we're calling the cook method from the mypotato object. Cool? All right. So we talked earlier a little bit about the public keyword that appears at the front of our when we declare variable names and even function names. The idea is that you're now making these variables or properties and these functions or methods available to anybody anywhere where you instantiate the object. Let me explain. At this point, I'm instantiating my person. And with my person, I can actually assign the value of 100 to that person's weight and call the run 5 miles. So I have complete access to all 3 things here inside this class from outside of the class. And you'll see in a second what I mean by from outside the class. Pretty insane, right? That's the intensity workout right there. So here's an example of a protected of some protected variables. So this is more like an API, right? So because I've protected sides and fill color, out here, when I actually instantiate a new rectangle, I cannot call echo rectangle sides. It won't give me what this is currently set to. It'll give me a fatal error. But see if there's more to that. Instead, what I would call is get sides. And that gives me the API. Oh, is it not scrolling? Hold on. I think I figured out how to do this one time. If I can see my mouse, there we go. There we go. Okay, so I've created a get angle and get sides, and all it does is return this class's sides property. And the reason we do that is because we don't want people to have the ability to go in and change sides unless we give them the ability in another function like set sides. So we can do more to protect the values of our objects with an API setup like this. And that being the case, now I can echo get sides, and it just returns that value to that echo statement. Everybody follow? Cool. So if public is anybody and everybody can access a property in method, protected is myself as a class and all of my children can, all my child classes can access my methods and properties. Private is to me as a parent, to me as a class alone. So I can only access the name the name property from within the person class. Infant does not have the ability to access name. But what it can do is reach up and set name. Let me scroll down so you guys can see the rest of what's going on in there. I've lost my mouse. Here we go. And it is impossible. There we go. Okay, so in this case, I've got a new infant set up as my person, and I'm able to, for that infant, set name, and then echo my person walks would actually fail because that is a private. The words are slipping away from me for some reason. It's a private property. Should have just left it out there for a call out for a test and quiz. So what's static? Static is another keyword that we can use in addition to the public, private, or protected. Thank you. Keywords. There's some interesting consensus online as to what are good reasons to use a static method. But the idea is that you can access these methods without first instantiating the class. In other words, you don't actually have an object to work with. I'm not working with dog. But I might be working with a utility, such as time. Time exists on the server, and I'm wanting to call and get that time. Let me actually show an example of that. Oh, and by the way, when accessing the static property, we're doing so by calling the name of the class, a colon, and then whether it be the method or the property we're calling. The property would then have the $sign. Let me show you these examples because I think they're useful. In languages like C# and Java, statics are part of the language. We probably have some in PHP. I just couldn't think of any when I did this slide, and I never updated it. You can do things like console.writeLine or integer try parse or string join. These are all utilities, but they don't actually. We're not instantiating an object before we use them. But these are objects. These are classes, static methods and properties. So here's some static examples in PHP we can create. Time equals time from. And so that would give us a return value of however many hours and minutes since that time. And then the sum calculator, sum, for 1 plus 2. I haven't actually had a lot of need to create static classes, and you probably won't run into it much, but it's good to cover it here. So comments. No, not those kinds of comments. I'm not ready for that yet. We're going to be talking about these kinds of comments. Some of these are great. If you guys can see these up on the screen, I hope you can read them. So you might be wondering, why on earth am I covering comments in an object-oriented talk? And it's because doc blocks are useful in code. Most of the time, most frameworks you use are not going to read your documentation for you and use it, but we're starting to see this more and more in newer and upcoming frameworks. And in fact, we do this in Symfony 2, and we're going to be doing this in Drupal 8. So getting an understanding of what doc blocks are and how to build them out and understanding what's available to you is going to be important. When it comes to commenting, you will forget what the hell you were doing when you wrote that code. Write to yourself as though you were writing to yourself 3 years from now and you're drunk. Tags exist as a component of comments to kind of help whatever system you're using identify some metadata for that comment. You can tag stuff like the author, the copyright, the license available for it. You can tag what return type is going to be returned by a function or a method. You can identify or tag what parameters are going to go into this function. And that stuff actually is powerful because there are automatic document builders out there who will go and look at all your code, look at all your doc blocks, and build documentation based off of that. In fact, Drupal.org is an example of that. So one thing to keep in mind is that each document block should be specific to the item that it is just above. So this is a larger doc block, but it is all specific to simple class. This is a very short and brief doc block, but it is specific to this, I want to call it a variable. Help me out. Thank you. All right. So, and again, I'm utilizing tags, telling it that it's going to be a string. It stores data for the class. Yada, yada. All that information is useful, and again, it can be automatically processed by some document handlers. Let's see here. That's a lot faster than this. That just finally came up on my screen. Okay. And I talked a little bit about that already. So here's a couple of different links to examples. I wonder if I can click on those. See, I can't see my mouse. There we go. Yay, that worked. So again, this is a great example of automatic documentation. If you come down here, click on View Code, and you can see there was doc blocks written throughout, and all of these were generated from that doc block documentation. So pretty powerful, pretty good stuff. I'll come back over here. Okay, who here has heard the term namespacing? Keep your hand up. I asked that freaking backwards. I should have asked who here has had experience with PHP or object-oriented programming. Okay, keep your hand up and hold them up high. Keep your hand up if you've used namespacing. Okay. This was really new to me just less than a year ago. I had no clue. I went to a talk that Ryan Zarma was giving on the Commerce Guys, Drupal Commerce. And he was talking about Drupal 8, and he was talking about namespacing, and I was just like, whoa. I had no clue what this was. But it's really powerful. It's really awesome and super simple. A namespace is used simply to avoid conflicting definitions and introduce a more flexibility and organization in your code base. So all that aside, imagine a namespace as a drawer. Okay, you can put things in it like a pencil, ruler, or paper, and these are your belongings. Underneath your drawer is somebody else's. He puts the same things in it: paper, pencil, and etc. But to avoid using each other's items, you label the drawers so it's clear what belongs to whom. And we can do this in code. So in this case, we got namespace my project, and within that function run. Now I've not defined a class here. Let me make that clear. There's no class actually in this case, but we've got a function run, and we echo that statement. And in order to access run, I can't do that. Run's not been defined at this point. Okay, what has been defined is my project run. So namespacing, we do it right now with functions in Drupal by, my module's name underscore the function that I want to do. Well, that goes away with namespaces. So, and you'll see that a lot in Drupal 8. You can have sub-namespaces, and you can kind of think of these as directories almost because of the way it's structured. They're extremely useful for organizing and structuring a project. And it also is good practice or best practice to create your file names and your file structure the same way that your namespacing is. So I would actually have this file in my project blog, auth, handler, social, Twitter, and the name of the file is right there somewhere. And that's just the doc block. But the namespace matches the directory structure. And I've got here a quick comparison of procedural versus object-oriented. And this is going to be interesting because I do definitely need to scroll on these. So if I can, okay. So in this case, I've got two functions, and literally all it's going to do is assign a value to an array element, in both cases using arrays to try and put some structure to our madness with what we're trying to create. We want to create a couple of people, and those people each have a name, a job, and an age, and so we create a couple of arrays to do that, and we echo that information out. Let's see here. Okay, I'm at the bottom. So yeah, that's all the work involved with handling that. Over here, on the other hand, we've defined, so in this case, there's no real definition of what a person is. You know, there's nobody saying this is how you define a person, that he has an age, name, and job. There's nobody defining to your developer that, you know, if you don't stick within this structure, it's going to break our code. There's no way of making sure they're staying within the parameters of your blueprints or how you've developed the site. So somebody coming down the line might do something funky and add more things that don't need to be there or need to belong to a different part of the array or some other stuff. So it can get pretty messy with the procedural code. Over here, on the other hand, in object-oriented, we've defined a class. We've defined a structure. We've defined a blueprint. And now we know that every person has a name, age, and job, and we can very easily construct that person, passing in their name, age, and job, and run a function that quickly updates those parameters. And look how clean that is. I mean, let's go back over here, just kind of compare how clean that code is, how easily understood it is, how structured it is, and how well it keeps your developers or future developers in line. Right, so back I say. And I got through this a lot faster than my second time through this talk. Last time I did this, I went way over. So this is interesting. I really buzzed through this. So again, in summary, classes are your blueprints, objects are the actual houses. They can have a parent-child relationship, which is great for structuring your code and organizing your code. Think about visibility. You got public, protected, and private. Again, public is anybody can mess with it, whether it be a method or property. Protected means you and your children can mess with it, so it's within the house, within the parameters of you protecting your family. Think of it like that. And then private is you as the parent. You got some private stash you don't want your children in, right? And then namespaces, think of those as like directories that allow you to, clean. I like that analogy with the drawers. You got stuff in two different drawers. You put names on both of them. They both carry the same thing, but there's no conflict because you each know what's doing who belongs to who, or what belongs to who, what belongs to who, not who belongs to who. Guys, I blew through that way faster than I thought I could. So do we have any questions? You may as well throw them out. We've got time. Go for it.
In AAA, do modules use namespaces instead of...
Do what use namespaces?
Will the modules in AAA use namespaces?
Yes, you'll see namespaces all over the place. Anybody else? All right, who here is a PHP developer by trade? All right, how many JavaScript developers do we have? Oh, wow. Okay, I'm really curious. What is the rest of the room? Because I said PHP and JavaScript. So what is everybody else doing? Themers? Java? Really? Themers? Okay. Now, as far as themers, you're working in JavaScript. With the frameworks you're using, are they written in an object-oriented way? I don't use JavaScript that much. I do it outside of Drupal, but. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Did this help kind of allow you to kind of get your head wrapped around what an OP might be for those frameworks even? Cool. Come on, pass out some questions. Go for it.
To protect the slides?
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
So on the right side and the bottom, echo rectangle sides.
Mm-hmm. That would fatal. That would give you a fatal error. because it is protected. And we're trying to access it outside of a outside of a class. So here's where the class is actually closed off. Okay. Sorry, I know I made them look like they're part of the same file, which you can do, but it's not best practice.
You're still allowed because rectangles inherits from shape, so I thought you'd be okay.
It would if this was inside of that class. Okay, cool. Who's written a module that includes or has object-oriented code in it? Good, cool. What kind of modules did you write?
Making a reporting, like showing site statistics and showing veracity, stuff like that.
All right. The only modules I've been able to take advantage of OOP practices in Drupal 7 was Migrate. Migrate is all OOP, and it encourages OOP writing as far as building out your custom migrations. It is a great way to get into OOP. If you are a Drupal 7 developer or even a themer and you want to know and understand and get into the practice of object-oriented programming, go write a migration module. Just create a quick spreadsheet of 3 items, and, apples, bananas, and oranges or something, and migrate that in. Create a node that needs it. It'll be a great practice in actually writing object-oriented code in Drupal 7. If that's where you're, that's your forte. Anybody else? I'm curious, me blowing through it that fast, did it completely go over people's heads, or do you think you actually grasped some of the concepts? Did it help out?
I don't know if I would have grasped it if I didn't already know parent-child relationships and stuff.
Who's never worked with OOP? Did it help you?
Yes, help me understand a little bit more about it. We have a themer and front-end site builder. It's more problem solving, how to find the issues and the errors, and figure out how to find the solution. Cool. So it helped me out a lot.
Excellent, thank you. How about you, sir?
Yeah, just learning it, and even though you blew through it quickly, I was able to recognize a lot of this stuff from the learning that I've been doing. And I really liked your suggestion of the migrate module as a way to start implementing some of the stuff to get familiar with it. Thanks for that.
Excellent. Yes, sir. No, I don't. This is actually the first time it's being recorded, so. Well, guys, it's up to you if you want to stick around. Ask any more questions. I don't want to keep everybody just hanging out. But yeah, thanks a lot.